Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Congressman Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Ryan, for the introduction. And what I'm about to say should be getting old, but unfortunately it isn't. And so this is what I want to say. Last week, I was on the floor of the House of Representatives, and now I want to say how happy I am to stand in front of normal, rational, kind people. I want to thank Donna Dupron for your amazing leadership and work as president of the chamber, and also to Sherry Kramer for being chairman. I want to say that as I reflected back on my time in Congress and in the state legislature and Torrance City Council, one of the hardest things I ever did was when I led Leadership Torrance 24 years ago for Torrance Chamber of Commerce. And I thought once I did that, I could do anything. So I also do want to thank my amazing colleague, Maxine Waters, for her amazing work on so many issues. She was chair of financial services. She's now the ranking member. And in her role, she has made sure to promote American capitalism, but also to make sure that it works for all of us. So thank you, Maxine, for the great work that you do. I also want to thank law enforcement, Torrance police officers for keeping us safe, and the Torrance firefighters for keeping us safe as well. So thank you for your service. And then to all the past chairmen and chairwomen who are here, thank you for your service. I know they paid you big bucks to take that position. And also to the friends of Pastor Dan as well. And we all remember him. And I also want to mention that we have, and just objectively speaking, the best school board here, the Torrance School Board. My wife is on the Torrance School Board, and Betty couldn't make it today. She is on the California Special Education Commission, and they have a simultaneous meeting, but she expresses her heartfelt thanks to all of you for all you do for our community. So I thought I'd talk about three issues. First is a little bit about the economy nationally, and then I'm going to talk about some of their projects and funding locally, and then I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence. So nationally, we've had a number of really good economic reports. We had a blowout jobs report last month, far above expectations. We had a report showing consumer sentiment is rising. The Dow Jones hit 38,000 for the first time in U.S. history. If you have a retirement account or education savings plan, your accounts are higher now than they were 4 years ago. At the same time, we know prices are high. And that's why President Biden and Democrats are working to lower costs. We passed the Inflation Reduction Act that capped insulin at $35 a month. That drug was so high for some folks that it bankrupted them, they couldn't afford it. That law also, for the first time, allowed Medicare to negotiate with drug companies to reduce the prices of other pharmaceutical drugs. And we're also working on additional legislation to expand that program even further. We're also working to reduce junk fees and to make sure that people have transparency when they go and purchase products. The House also passed a bipartisan tax bill recently. It did three main things. It expanded the child tax credit. It also had a low-income housing tax credit, and it had a research and development tax credit. So that's now on the Senate side, and we hope the Senate will pass that soon as well. And then locally, one of the things that Congresswoman Waters and I get to do is we get to do what are known as community-funded projects. There are about 10 to 15 projects every year, and we vet these projects, we submit them to the Appropriations Committee, and then we fight to make sure that these projects get through the Appropriations Committee. So very pleased that I've been able to secure $5 million for the South Bay, and this includes a mobile crisis response pilot program, an inclusive friendship school for those with special needs. It provides them job training, the Manhattan Beach Safe Cycling Project, Pathways to Success, a college and career support project, and $1 million to a Torrance temporary housing program. If any of you believe you have worthwhile projects, please let me or Congressman Waters' office know, and we will look into it. In addition, Congresswoman Waters and I are making sure that we get the infrastructure funding locally from the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed last term. And also the Inflation Reduction Act that we passed last term had a large amount of funding for climate change and energy related projects. California was also recently awarded as one of their hydrogen hubs across the nation. That's going to bring additional jobs as well to the local economy. So in terms of some of the other bills we also passed the CHIPS and Science Act. That's also bringing high-tech chip manufacturing and associated manufacturing back to the United States. I just met with a person yesterday who was looking at building a foundry in Southern California to create chips. That's something that would not have happened but for this CHIPS and Science Act. And so as these acts get implemented by the various federal agencies, if any of you are interested in knowing more about it or know people that are interested in some of the grants and other funding programs there are, please, again, let me or Congresswoman Waters know or our staff. And then I thought I'd talk now about artificial intelligence. So last year when I spoke to you, I talked about ChatGPT, and that was pretty revolutionary. And what it did is you could type in queries in natural language, and then it'll respond to you in natural language with sentences and paragraphs. And it was pretty amazing what it did. You could ask it, why was the Battle of Midway such an amazing and important battle in World War II? And then it'll pop out to you an entire essay that you submit to your history professor. So just in that short period of time, in less than a year and a half, we see remarkable advancements. So Google came out with Gemini, which is also another version of what's known as generative AI. And now instead of you providing text to this AI model, you can just show it pictures, and then it tells you what's happening with those pictures. You can basically show it videos, and it'll analyze the video and tell you what's happening in that video, give you the highlights of the video. So it became multimodal in a sense. And then you may have seen, and if you haven't, you should just go search for it on the internet. It's called Sora, S-O-R-A. Now you can type sentences, and then the AI generates video back at you. So you could, for example, say, I want to see a butterfly flying in the ocean that meets a bunch of dinosaurs and then it gets scared. And it will generate a video that does that. You can say, I want a red car going down a street. And then you can say, okay, I don't like that. I want it to be set in 1920s. I want it set in medieval times. I want it to be snowing. It is pretty remarkable just what we've seen in the year and a half. So I'm going to explain to you how I view AI from the perspective of a legislator, which is different than how you might or should view AI, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Yesterday, Speaker Mike Johnson and Leader Hakeem Jeffries established a House bipartisan task force on AI. I am the co-chair along with Republican Jay Overnote, and so we've been tasked with putting out sort of the House report on how we might want to address AI. And every committee jurisdiction has a part of AI. So financial services, for example, has a large part of AI and how it deals with financial services products. Congresswoman Waters has established basically an AI task force as well within financial services to work on that. So our goal is to sort of amalgamate this together into a report as to what might be the best way to go forward. And my view as a legislator is, the best analogy I have is sort of two bodies of water of AI, a very large ocean of AI, and then this small lake of AI. So this large ocean of AI is all the AI we do not care about. So if the AI in your smart refrigerator makes ice cubes you don't like, we don't care about that. It's going to be, right? So most AI we're not going to deal with. And so in this small lake, why would we want to deal with this AI? So to me, there's at least three buckets. The first is AI that can destroy the world. So the Department of Defense has weapons known as autonomous weapons that launch automatically. I've introduced bipartisan, bicameral legislation that essentially says no matter how amazing AI ever gets, we're never going to let it launch a nuclear weapon by itself. There's always got to be a human in the loop. Second bucket is going to be AI that isn't going to destroy the world but could kill you individually. When Mark Warnick's cell phone malfunctions, right, it's not going 50 miles per hour. Turns out there's a lot of AI in moving objects. Planes, trains, automobiles. My view is we need more regulators at the state and federal levels, more trained in AI to deal with some of the unique aspects of it. And then the last bucket is really the hardest, which is AI that has some sort of harm that is not necessarily going to kill anyone. And so this harm could be quite broad and in a lot of different areas. So if, for example, the AI hiring algorithm that a large company uses to hire people discriminates based on gender or protected class, that would be a problem. That would be not good. And so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. But how would you actually regulate that? How would you sort of put into law something about a software algorithm? Those are some challenges that we're facing. Facial recognition is really pretty amazing. Computers can recognize faces better than humans can. It also turns out that with the technology, as it's currently used in most places, it is less accurate for people with darker skin. So my view is if you deploy this at law enforcement agencies across America, it's a massive equal protection violation because minorities are going to be misidentified at higher rates. So I've introduced legislation to put guardrails on facial recognition. But you can imagine a lot of different settings and scenarios. You might have AI in there that is either intentionally or unintentionally discriminating or doing things that are harmful to society. So that's one of the things that this task force is going to look at, how we might sort of go forward in that way. Now, from your perspective, the way AI is going to come at you is it's going to be, for most of you, in the form of a product. So for example, all of you use a word processor. Let's say it's Microsoft Word. I don't know how to program and write a word processor, and probably most of you don't either, and that's okay. You don't need to understand, right, AI algorithms. You don't need to understand software. You're going to be given a product that is then going to help you in your company, and it's going to help make tasks more efficient. So what AI will do for a number of human tasks is make it more efficient or just outright eliminate those human tasks. So I'll give you an example. My brother is a radiologist. My parents still remind me of that, by the way. And right now, you could use AI and it can look at a scan and it can say, hey, here are the 5 problematic areas that we think you might want to spend your attention on when you look at that scan. So a radiologist using AI could look at a scan and arrive at a conclusion somewhat faster than a radiologist not using AI. Maybe at some point in the future, AI can completely just read the scan by itself. We're not quite there yet, but we're at a place where radiologists are going to be more efficient. Well, so what do you do with that? I'll give you another example. I was talking to an Amazon executive. He said that their software programmers are now about 30% more efficient. They have a program called Amazon Code Whisperer that's basically autocomplete for software. So you write in some lines of code, and then it completes that code for you. So if you just do the math on that, that means a software programmer using AI could be more efficient in a 4-day work week than a software programmer not using AI right now in a 5-day work week. So again, what do you do with that? I vote for the 4-day work week. But Amazon could fire 30% of its programmers and achieve the same productivity. Or they can make their programmers work 30% harder and get more productivity. A lot of this, government isn't going to have a role, nor should we. Industries are going to have to figure this out by themselves. That's why there was a Hollywood strike. There was a writer's strike, there was an actor's strike, because they had to figure out, hey, how do we go forward and monetize AI in a way that we believe is fair to all the stakeholders? And so they did. They came up with a contract that had certain rules of how they're going to address AI in their industry. I'm not sure it's a right way or wrong way. There has to just be a way going forward. So I'll give you sort of another example to think about. I'm on the Intellectual Property Subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. We had a hearing on intellectual property and artificial intelligence, and one of the witnesses was a former general counsel of the Copyright Office. He had some pretty strong views, and his view was generally most of all this stuff is fair use, meaning you don't have to pay. So I asked him a series of questions. As you may know, the way ChatGPT and these large generative AI models work is they basically scour the entire internet and they train themselves on everything on the internet. It turns out that some of what's on the internet is copyrighted, such as, for example, all of Taylor Swift's songs. So let's say this AI model trains itself on the internet, including the songs of Taylor Swift. And so I asked him, I said, does this company have to pay Taylor Swift any amount of money for training on her songs? And he said, no, that's fair use. And I said, okay, what if this model then generates lyrics in the style of Taylor Swift? Do you have to compensate her for that? And he said, no, I think that's fair use also. And I said, well, what if it generates lyrics in the style of Taylor Swift and then generates audio that sounds very similar to Taylor Swift and has a brand new song? Do you have to compensate her? And at that point, he started to say, well, maybe in certain circumstances. And then I said, well, what if you then attach a video to that looks remarkably like Taylor Swift? And he sort of still thought that was probably fair use. So then, a few weeks later, I get a letter from another former general counsel of the Copyright Office saying, no, he's all wrong. So there is definitely a split, right, even within the intellectual property community as how to go forward. So I just think there just has to be a way forward. There just has to be rules of the road, because right now it's sort of wild, wild west. No one really knows if any of this is legal or not. There are lawsuits ongoing. There is, in fact, lawsuits against AI companies from performing artists who believe their copyright works are being used in a way that they should be compensated. The New York Times has sued these AI companies, believing that their copyrighted material should not be used. So we'll see how sort of that all shakes out in the courts. It's also possible Congress acts on these issues as well. So it does raise sort of a whole new host of different issues for folks to think about. But in the meantime, for most of you, you don't have to deal with that, because it doesn't come to you again in a product, and you'll be given sort of options. For example, you can download this app that makes your office run this much better because it does X, Y, and Z. You can imagine, for example, AI algorithms and products that will do scheduling for dentist's office, right? The reason that if you use ChatGPT and you ask it some questions and it returns things that are completely bonkers is because it is trained to do something that most people don't need, which is answer every question anyone can ask anywhere in the world. But if you just had, let's say, a limited model that was simply designed to do scheduling for doctors, that might be pretty good, and that might be pretty helpful. And so I think what we're going to see is a bunch of different applications using AI for very limited scenarios that are going to be pretty accurate. And the one thing if you don't remember anything else I said, I want you to understand this, which is how exactly these models work. And the first thing is, we don't know, okay? So what we know is it gets from point A to conclusion most of the time pretty accurately. We don't know how it gets it. We can't trace exactly what this model is doing. And the second is, none of these models are designed to seek the truth. They are essentially probability models. So probably the best way to think of it is, think of a three-dimensional grid of actuary tables. Just a huge amount of data with probabilities. And let's say every word in English language is assigned a probability based on, if it's this word, the next word is going to be X followed by the next word, and then you get a sentence followed by a paragraph and so on. So ultimately, at the end of the day, what these models are returning to you is not truth, but the most popular response to your query. So that's probably the best way to think about it, which again is why it could never launch nuclear weapons by itself. So with that, thank you so much for having me here. I look forward to working with all of you as we make our place even better.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Keith Hobbs from Torrance Memorial. Congressman Liu, we really appreciate the update on AI. I was taking notes on my phone and sending messages back to leaders at the hospital. Attorney General Bonta has sent us a letter just yesterday asking us for an update on how we're using AI in healthcare. And some of the updates you've shared are some of the things that either we've implemented or looking at Torrance Memorial. But thank you for your support of the Torrance Area Chamber as well as the community, and we have a little small token gift for you. So.
Look, I'm getting hospital recommended chocolates. I'm very excited.
Love to hear more about it.
Thank you very much, Congressman Liu. I was expecting the congressman to tell us that AI had written that speech too, as he did last year, but that wasn't the case. And I'm honestly, I'm kind of wondering, I think everybody would be very happy that we're going to have better radiologists, but I'm not sure everybody will be completely satisfied that there'll be less Taylor Swift songs. So, but anyway, very enlightening. And again, thank you, Congressman Liu. So I'd like to ask to come to the stage Mina Semenza of the South Bay Association of Realtors to introduce Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Thank you, Wally. Good afternoon, everyone. The Honorable Congresswoman Maxine Waters is one of the most powerful women in American politics today. She has a reputation as a fearless and outspoken advocate for women, children, people of color, the poor, veterans, and seniors. She has been dubbed Auntie Maxine by millennials who appreciate her understanding of issues important to them. Re-elected in November 2022 to her 17th term, with more than 70% of the vote in the 43rd Congressional District. Congresswoman Waters represents parts of Los Angeles, including the communities of Westchester and Playa del Rey, the unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County, comprised of Lenox, West Athens, West Carson, Harbor, Gateway, El Camino Village, and Watts. The 43rd District also includes the diverse cities of Gardena, Hawthorne, Inglewood, Lawndale, and Torrance. Did I mention Lamita? Okay. She made history as the first woman and first African American chair of the House Financial Services Committee, an integral member of the Congressional Democratic leadership. She serves as a member of the Steering and Policy Committee and is the co-chair of the Bipartisan Congressional Task Force on Alzheimer's. She is also a founding member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and past chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Throughout her more than 40 years of public service, Maxine Waters has been on the cutting edge, tackling difficult issues. She has combined her strong legislative and public policy acumen and high visibility in Democratic Party activities with an unusual ability to do grassroots organizing. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so very much, Mina, for that kind introduction. And of course, I'm so grateful to Donna Duperon, the President and CEO of the Torrance Chamber of Commerce, for the invitation to speak to you all here today. I'm also pleased to join Eric Wally, today's Master of Ceremonies. He's my friend and colleague and responsible for funding my art contests. Thank you, Honda. Thank you, Eric, so very much for that. And of course, I'm pleased to be here with my friend and colleague, Ted Lieu. Ted Lieu is a very humble man. And when he talked about AI, he didn't tell you that he has just received an important appointment to co-chair a task force for the entire House of Representatives. What's important about that? It is bipartisan, and we don't do very much bipartisan in the Congress of the United States of America. So he was chosen by Hakeem Jeffries and about Mike Johnson to take on this important role, even though there are various aspects of AI that must be addressed. And of course, I'm doing financial services, but they're overall on everything. And so that's very important. He just breezed past it, but he has a job to do, and he has provided leadership on it early on. He's been moving around, organizing groups, and so I want you to give him a big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, the work of the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce remains vital to the growth and prosperity of our community here in the city of Torrance and across the South Bay region. Chambers of commerce are critical to the economic vitality of local communities. I know this is a responsibility that everyone in this room takes seriously. To ensure clear and consistent communication with local business leaders, the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce holds monthly government affairs policy program meetings to implement an advocacy agenda that supports the broader business community. These meetings are just one of the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce's many initiatives focused on increasing collaboration and coordination across the South Bay business community and demonstrate the proud commitment to the livelihood of our friends and neighbors. Let's give the Chamber a big round of applause. Donna Duperon. So, as I'm sure you've all seen for several months now, the House has been increasingly dysfunctional and historically ineffective. In fact, when the House goes back to DC on the 28th, we will be just 2 days away from yet another shutdown deadline. Unfortunately, my colleagues and I still have not seen any detailed plan from Speaker Johnson on how we will avert this shutdown or fund critical government agencies. So despite the chaos the House has been embroiled in, I'm working around the clock as much as I can in a bipartisan effort in Congress to make major progress on issues that our communities here in the South Bay care about very deeply. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you today to share these important updates. First, I want to talk about housing. I want to start by discussing my most urgent priority in Congress, addressing our nation's worsening affordable housing and homelessness crisis. As we all know, housing is at the heart of everything. Without stable and affordable housing for all, we see diminished educational outcomes for children, employment gaps, more families and older adults falling into homelessness for the first time in their lives, less access to home ownership, and with it, less wealth to start a small business and other ventures. In short, housing is essential to long-term economic prosperity and community well-being. Unfortunately, since we convened last year, there has not been the level of progress that we would have hoped for because we don't have the kind of bipartisanship that I have alluded to. Indeed, we've seen demand for housing continue to outpace supply over the last decade, leading to one of the worst housing affordability and homelessness crisis in our nation's history. Since the onset of pandemic in 2020, we have seen house prices skyrocket by 47% as rents have increased between 20 to 40% in communities across the country. And rising housing costs remain a key driver of U.S. inflation, making up nearly 70% of outstanding core inflation. The state of California, including the Los Angeles and South Bay region, remains at the epicenter of the housing and homelessness crisis. In January of this year, the median home price in the South Bay region topped $1.6 million, as the average rent in Torrance, for example, reached nearly $2,500. Meanwhile, between 2022 and 2023, homelessness increased in the greater Los Angeles area by 9.5%, which is below the 12% nationwide increase. There are currently about 6,500 people experiencing homelessness in parts of the South Bay region. While we know we have a lot of work left to do, I take immense pride in the work that the Financial Services Committee and the House Democrats led to secure unprecedented levels of housing investments over the last two Congresses to keep families in the South Bay housed through the pandemic relief legislation that we created, including the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan Act, millions of which have reached communities throughout the South Bay region. We also secured over $150 billion in fair and affordable housing investments through what is Ted talked about, the Build Back Better Act, which passed the House in 2021. Unfortunately, as you all know, this historic bill was blocked by two of my Democratic colleagues, Senator Manchin and Sinema in the Senate, and therefore it never became law. The Senators Manchin and Sinema in the Senate, I say it again, I'm still upset with them about killing my legislation, and I want everybody to know who did it. And so I'm telling you. And so it never became law. However, we were able to secure several Build Back Better housing priorities through the recent year 2023 omnibus spending package, including the largest ever annual infusion of homeless assistance through the HUD's Continuum of Care program. So just last month, HUD announced that the state of California was awarded the largest level of assistance of any other state at a total of $601 million. The Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, ALASA, which you've heard so much about, which we got to change. We've got to make sure that the money that we're sending from the federal government and the money that they get from the county and the city is spent appropriately. We think we can do better with the appropriations that are sent to LASA, and so I think we need a revolution in LASA, and I intend to start it. Thank you. They received nearly $189 million of that funding, so we would all expect to see additional efforts toward permanently housing our neighbors who have been forced to live on the streets for too long. And although the federal political landscape has shifted this Congress, our work is not done. Last month, the House passed a bipartisan tax bill which included an expansion of the low-income housing tax credit program. While the bill will help incentivize the development of affordable housing, the success of the low-income housing tax credit largely hinges on HUD's housing subsidies to offset the cost and house the lowest income families. That's why Democrats have continued to lead the charge to secure robust new investments in fair and affordable housing this Congress. Last year, I reintroduced my groundbreaking legislation housing package, what I just referred to. But let me tell you what it includes. The Housing Crisis Response Act, which represents the housing title of the House-passed Build Back Better Act, which would invest more than $150 billion in fair and affordable housing investments to create nearly 1.4 million affordable and accessible homes, reduce housing costs for all, and help address stubborn core inflation. The next bill, the Ending Homelessness Act, which would end homelessness and significantly reduce poverty by transforming the Housing Choice Voucher Program into a federal entitlement so that every household who actually qualifies for assistance receives it. The bill also includes a federal ban on housing discrimination based on source of income and veteran status. And finally, the Down Payment Toward Equity Act, which would help revive the dream of home ownership for all and help address the racial wealth gap by providing $100 billion in direct assistance to help first-time, first-generation home buyers cover down payments, closing costs, and buy down mortgage interest rates. We can do this. Together, these bills represent the single largest and most comprehensive investment in affordable housing in the history of this country. It has broad cross-industry support, including from housing and civil rights advocates to workers, unions, housing developers, and faith-based organizations. As the top Democrat on the House Financial Services Committee, I look forward to getting these critical bills across the finish line and ensuring housing for all is one day a reality. As I continue to fight alongside my colleagues at the federal level, we need your help at the local level as well. Until we can secure robust funding to support local efforts, there are still critical local reforms needed to ensure the entire system works to get housing built quickly, affordable, and equitably. So I'm calling on my local partners, that includes those of you here today, to work with me to help streamline the building permit process, to garner local buy-in for affordable housing developments, reduce cumbersome building codes, address unnecessary or restrictive zoning and land use policies that are currently standing in the way of local progress on our shared housing goals. We need all hands on deck to get this job done. The reason I have really started to concentrate on this, I have learned that much of the costs, the increase in developing affordable housing, comes about because of our licensing and permitting processes. If you hold it up and drag it out at the local level, the costs will mount every day. Do you know what it costs to build so-called affordable housing in the Los Angeles area? $500,000 per unit. That's supposed to be building affordable housing. So it is so important for me to share with you that we can all be a part of this effort, particularly our local governments. Let's not hold up permitting and licensing. Let's not require our developers who want to develop affordable housing to have to do a lot that the city should be doing. Don't pile up the cost on them. I have watched in Los Angeles while they have required developers to change all of the wiring in the neighborhood practically. And I go so far as to say, take that fire hydrant up and replace it and put it someplace else. Now that's not quite like that, but a lot is being asked of our developers that costs money, that drives up the cost of housing and makes it so difficult for us to get. A word about artificial intelligence. You've heard everything you need to know, really, about artificial intelligence. But I want to move on to something that becomes a major topic of discussion, it has been over the past year. Artificial intelligence, otherwise known as AI. To be clear, AI has been around for years. Many companies have been using it. But since 2022, particularly with the proliferation of AI tools, including technology like Chat, GPT, Microsoft's Bing, and $1 billion worth of investments, other major tech giants like Google, Apple, and Amazon are making their own products. We're witnessing real time just how powerful this technology is and how likely it is to shape our futures. This has brought about serious questions and concerns that I've heard from community members all across Los Angeles County, including right here in South Bay, around the potential impact on society, including issues around bias, privacy, and security. There's also a concern about job displacement as AI takes over tasks traditionally performed by humans. As a top Democrat on the House Financial Services Committee, dating back to my time as chair, I've led the effort to explore both the potential consequences and benefits of this technology, particularly in the financial services industry, and to monitor the impact that AI might have on consumers. In fact, when I was chair, I created Congress's first task force on artificial intelligence, where we held nearly a dozen hearings and led the way to encourage equitable and responsible innovation. Even in the minority, I've continued to lead the way to push for Congress to explore the implications of AI on housing and financial services to ensure that these technologies do not exacerbate existing disparities and inequities within our financial system and negatively harm consumers across the South Bay. From tenant screening to home appraisals, the housing industry is also rapidly developing its use of AI technologies to make critical decisions about who has access to housing and the value of someone's largest investment, their home. Often with discriminatory adverse effects, federal agencies are also taking steps to oversee the use of AI, including in home appraisals. If harnessed correctly, AI can expand financial access for consumers, aspiring homeowners, and renters and small businesses. However, the speed at which AI is being developed can potentially outpace Congress and regulatory agencies and the regulator's role in fully addressing and understanding the harms of AI systems and ability to put in place integral consumer, investor, and market protections. That's why I'm so proud to announce that earlier this year, I was able to work alongside the chair of the committee to form the committee's bipartisan working group on AI. Through this working group, we will vigorously explore AI's impact on the financial services and housing industry, the development of new products and services, fraud prevention, compliance efficacy, and the enhancement of supervisory and regulatory tools, as well as how AI may impact, this is what I will be really focused on, impact the financial services workforce. We also expect to play a major role when and if Congress decides to regulate AI. Following my committee's announcement of this bipartisan working group yesterday, I told you what happened in that announcement with Ted Lieu. Now, when Ted Lieu does that work, they're going to be doing the work for all of Congress. I'm going to be focused really on financial services, but I'm at the mercy of Ted Lieu, because if Ted Lieu tells me the regulations have got to be tough, I've got to be tough. If he tells me to back off, I got to back off. So hope Ted Lieu guides me in the right direction. Okay, let me just move on a little bit. I know that we have limited time, but you always have to warn me when I speak because I take too long. But I want to tell you a little bit about cryptocurrency, because I have the responsibility as a leading person on the Financial Services Committee to tell us where we're going with cryptocurrency. And we're starting with something called stablecoins. I want to take a moment to update you on the work we're doing on cryptocurrency, particularly as it relates to stablecoins, which is a type of cryptocurrency that is pegged to the US dollar. And over the years, we've seen how the failures of crypto projects such as Terra, USD, Celsius, BlockFi, Genesis, and most significantly, you all know what happened with FTX and the Alameda research, as well as the law-breaking behavior of Binance, have posed major harm to those who invested in their hard-earned money in cryptocurrencies, including investors in the South Bay. Right now, I'm doing everything I can in Congress to make sure this never happens again, and continuing the work that I started when I was chair of the committee to craft a bipartisan stablecoin bill that will adequately protect consumers and investors. And financial services, we have to be concerned about investors. We oversee the SEC, the feds. They're responsible for coming down, getting this inflation down. And I just said to Chairman Powell, what's going to happen at your next meeting? To vert a little bit, he said, it won't be coming down at the next meeting, but at the next meeting. And I said to him, don't come back to talk to us until you get this inflation down. And so, but I want to tell you a little bit more about this bipartisan effort on stablecoins. I'm pleased to announce that myself and the chairman are making major progress in putting together a bipartisan bill that we believe adequately addresses concerns related to stablecoins and protects customers. As I started to talk about all of the agencies of government that we oversee, SEC is very important. It's our cop on the block. And they've got to have the tools to protect investors with all of this crypto that's coming our way, and to make sure that consumers don't just get ripped off with this new technology. And so we're in the final stages of ironing out a few outstanding issues. I believe we're getting closer and closer to a deal. It's important to note that in order to move forward, we must have the support of everybody. The administration plays in on this, the Senate, we have not only the feds, but we have places like New York who started out early with cryptocurrency, and they have developed cryptocurrency and the way to involve the issuers of cryptocurrency. And so as we move to deal with it and come up with the regulation that's needed, we've got to do some grandfathering, I think, of places like New York, because they've protected and perfected how they get issuers and the wallets and everything that goes along with that. And so we have to work with all of these in order to come to some agreement. And let me just go on by saying that the president can and is looking forward to ultimately signing stablecoins. I think we'll get that done, certainly before the end of the year. As a result of the widespread dysfunction in the House, it is unlikely that a negotiated stablecoin will happen any sooner than that. We've got to be concerned about how we're going to get it through the House floor after McHenry, who is the chair of the committee, and I agree on what we should be doing and how we should move forward, how the banks are going to be involved, how the non-banks are going to be involved. Our job is to get it now through the floor. I think I can bring my side of the House along. I make no promises about the other side of the aisle. Rest assured that we're taking this duty to legislate and create clear federal rules for stablecoins very seriously. So I look forward to sharing an update with you all on the status of bipartisan negotiations very soon, and how this bill will help to ensure that South Bay consumers and our markets are protected from any future harm. Good news, student loan debt. Now let's talk about student loan debt. Some of you may be way past the time when you have to be concerned about it. You've been out for a long time, but you got children and you got grandchildren. So as we all know, high student debt is a major barrier to housing and financial stability for many across the South Bay. That's why President Biden set out to give unprecedented help to student loan borrowers by canceling up to $20,000 of student debt per person. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court blocked these efforts and prevented 40 million people across the country from experiencing this much needed relief. We're not stopping. We think that we're going to be very successful as we continue to protect our students who are working hard to get these degrees, and look forward to home ownership, look forward to marriage, look forward to having insurance and all of that. I've heard from many across Los Angeles County and in the South Bay that this decision is having major financial implications for their families, while the Supreme Court's decision is negatively impacting families everywhere. So I'm pleased to share that President Biden did not let this stop his promise to help student loan borrowers. In fact, because of President Biden's work to improve student loan programs, more than $127 billion in debt has been canceled for over 3 million Americans, more than any president in history. And so I see a lot of nervousness and movement as I look across the room, people a little bit anxious for us to get on with this program. I could talk for about 15 more minutes, but I'm not going to do that except to draw your attention to the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, because it has created so many contracts and jobs. This was very important that we were able to get done. And so I am also involved with the electric vehicle charging stations that should be developed here in, I can't talk about transportation. I should be talking about it. I see that we have a friend who's over there that comes to Congress, knocks on every door, bothers me all the time about what am I doing for transportation. I spent more money and more time on transportation in Torrance than any place else. I can't tell you all about it, but please tell Kim Turner to stop bothering me. She does a very good job of representing Torrance, and she's able to get the money. She gets the greenback. I could go on and tell you what we're doing about water and other kinds of things, but again, I've taken much of your time, and I thank you for the opportunity to come every year. Every year, I promise you it will be shorter, but I can't do any better. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tamala Lewis. I'm the Senior Director of Community Affairs in the Foundation for Dignity Health Sports Park, AEG. And I'm one of those people that call her Auntie Maxine. Auntie has done great things for me personally. And when someone spoke earlier in their introduction and called her fearless, just a few months ago, I had Auntie help me introduce an award at my Women in Entertainment luncheon to Mr. Irvin Magic Johnson. And Irvin, Mr. Johnson started talking about her, and she looked at him and said, "Shut up, this is not my award." He looked at me and said, "I'm gonna shut up now." So, on behalf of the Torrance Area Chamber, I am truly honored to present you with this token of thank you. You know, you always got me and I got you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.